Daf Yomi, tractate by Metzia, page 112b, top of the page, with the words Sachir, Vizmano, Nishbav, Notel, etc. The Mishnah teaches if a hired laborer requests payment at the proper time and the employer claims he already paid him, the laborer takes an oath that he did not receive his wages and then receives the wages from the employer. The Gemara asks, why did the sages institute for hired laborers who is the plaintiff to take an oath and receive his wages, in opposition to the principle that in the case of monetary dispute between two parties, the defendant takes an oath that he is not liable and thereby exempts himself from payment? Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says they taught great halachot here. The Gemara is puzzled by this choice of words. Are these halachot? They are ordinances designed for the proper running of business transactions, not halachot that apply to everyone at all times. The Gemara amends the above statement. Rather, Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says they taught great ordinances here. Takanot gedolot shanukan. Takanos gedolos shanukan. Gedolos mikal dika ketanos. They taught great ordinances here. The Gemara is still unsatisfied. Does the word great indicate by inference that there are minor ordinances? Which ordinances are considered of minor importance? Rav Nachman says that Shmuel says they taught fixed ordinances here that are necessary for practical life. The reason that taking the oath is actually the duty of the employer, but the sages transfer the oath to the employer and impose it upon the hired laborer due to the livelihood of the hired laborer. The laborer requires his wages to survive. And therefore, if the employer is allowed to exempt himself by taking an oath, the laborer will be left with nothing. Nice move, sages. That makes sense. That's actually a good one. The Gemara asks, and simply due to the livelihood of the hired labor, should we cause the employer to lose out? If the employer is entitled to take an oath to exempt himself, why should he suffer due to the laborer's needs? The Gemara answers, it is preferable for the employer himself that the hired laborer should take an oath and receive his wages, so that laborers will hire themselves out to him with the knowledge that their wages are secure. The Gemara asks, why not argue the reverse, that it is preferable for the hired laborer himself that the employer should take an oath and be exempt so that he should be hired? If the terms of labor are too imposing, people will not hire laborers. The Gemara responds, the employer must perforce find a laborer to hire. The Gemara retorts, a hired laborer too must perforce allow himself to be hired out. The Gemara now retracts the previous explanation. Rather, the employer is preoccupied with many laborers, and it is more likely that he forgot and mistakenly believed that he had already paid his laborer's wages. The Gemara asks, if so, in other words, if it is reasonable that the employer forgot, we should give the laborer his wages without him taking an oath, as there are grounds to presume that the lawyer erred. The Gemara responds, the laborer takes an oath in order to alleviate the concerns of the employer, as he is not required to take an oath. The employer will feel that he has been cheated. The Gemara asks, but why not have the employer instead give him his wages in the presence of witnesses each time, which would remove any uncertainty? The Gemara answers, the matter would be an inconvenience to them both if they needed to find witnesses before each payment. The Gemara asks, but why not have the employer give him the wages at the outset, before he starts working, while he is less preoccupied? The Gemara answers, both of them want the payment to be in the form of credit. In other words, that the wages not be paid in advance. The employer prefers this arrangement in case he has no ready cash at his disposal, while the other laborer also prefers to be paid at the end of the day so that he does not lose his money in the meantime. Nice. The Gemara asks, if so, then even the dispute between them concerns a fixed amount of payment as well. The laborer should take an oath. Why did we learn in a Braita, if the craftsman says, you fix 2 coins for me as my payment, and the other, in other words, the employer says, I fixed only 1 coin for you, then the burden of proof rests upon the claimant. Why is it not assumed that the employer was preoccupied and forgot, as in the previous case? The Gemara answers, the fixing of wages is certainly an event that people remember, and there is no concern that the employer forgot how much he stipulated. The Gemara asks, if so, in other words, if the concern exists that the employer might have forgotten, then even if his time had passed for claiming his wages, the laborer should be entitled to take an oath and claim his wages. Why did we learn in the Mishnah, if the time had passed, he does not make an oath and receive the wages? The Gemara answers, the reason in that case it is that a presumption exists that an employer does not generally violate the prohibition of delaying payment of wages. The Gemara asks, but didn't you say that the employer is preoccupied with his laborers? The Gemara answers, this statement applies only before the time of his obligation to pay arrives, as it is possible that his preoccupation with other matters caused him to forget whether he had already paid him.